So we're here to talk about B Corp, and it's very appropriate that we all have a glass of something nice in our hands because we're joined by some amazing drinks companies on the panel, all B Corps. And it's an interesting time for the drinks industry. They seem to be at a bit of a crossroads where consumers are not only interested in taste, they're also interested in other things. They're interested in where their products are coming from, how their beer, how their cider's being made, how their spirits are being made, how they're treating their staff, all the good stuff. And B Corp certification has emerged as a bit of a sort of gold standard in terms of helping consumers and investors assess where companies are at. And new data shows that the UK B Corp movement is actually incredibly buoyant. So between 2023 and 2024, small and medium-sized UK B Corps saw 23% turnover growth versus a national average of 16%. 9.6% more employees, while others shrank by 0.5%. And apparently 91% of CEOs that run a B Corp are reporting a positive impact. There's 2,400 B Corps in the UK. We've got 4 of them on the stage. And we want to dig into what it means to be a B Corp and some of the benefits that these companies are finding with that. So we've got a great panel. On the end there, we have Laura from SXOLLIE.
Hi.
I've just been tasting their amazing cider. If you haven't got one yet, go and grab a SXOLLIE cider. It's amazing. We have Paul from Everleaf. We have Declan from Boatyard Distillery. And we have Felix from Small Beer. So why don't each of you just introduce yourselves briefly? Tell us a very brief bit about your business and what it is you do.
Yep.
Do you want to start at the end, Laura?
Yep, sure. Hi, my name is Laura, as you said. So SXOLLIE is a cider, but a cider like no other, in that where what you see is what you sip. So we use one ingredient and one ingredient only, which is, in this case, I'm drinking a Granny Smith cider made entirely from Granny Smith apples. And for that reason, unlike the rest of the cider industry, we don't need to add any sugar, concentrate, water, flavorings, colorings, because the apples we're putting in taste delicious to begin with. And that's it.
Thank you. Paul?
Hi, I'm Paul. I'm the founder of Everleaf non-alcoholic aperitifs. We have 3 different aperitifs, all designed for mixing, just with something with bubbles to make a spritz. Marine, mountain and forest, drawing from those biomes, using plants from there. We've got at least 15 plants per bottle. And that comes from my background, both as a bartender for almost 30 years, and also as a conservation biologist before that. So I've got a background in plants and botany and conservation. We have more and more of our guests wanting something delicious and non-alcoholic. So I made one. That's Everleaf. We're 6 years old and we've been a B Corp for 2 of them.
Brilliant. Thank you. Declan?
Hi, everyone. My name is Declan. So I should really have brought a bottle, shouldn't I? It's over there, though. Do feel free to taste it. I head up the Boatyard Distillery. We're based in Northwest Ireland, County Fermanagh, a very beautiful part of the world, rolling green hills. And as a distillery, we're really focused, I suppose, on doing everything the wrong way, the hard way. So we're really focused on liquid first, making sure that our liquid is amazing quality. We're really passionate about the martini cocktail. We've got a long-term goal in life that people will think of a martini cocktail and they'll think, well, Boatyard makes a great one. In doing things the right way, sustainability is at the core of what we do. And we have various practices that we utilize in the distillery. In all honesty, though, it's very Irish, our mentality, because a lot of sustainability just makes economical sense to do it that way as well.
Right, thank you. Felix?
Hi, I'm Felix and I'm co-founder of Small Beer. We're a brewery based in South Bermondsey in London, one stop from London Bridge. And we specialise in mid-strength beer. So we brew beers around the 2.5% mark. That means you can have a few beers, enjoy yourself, not get too smashed. Enjoy a couple of beers, perhaps, if you were just going for one. And you will see us around London in particular on draft, and then also in retailers as well. And we're sort of slowly spreading out. We've been running for 8 years now. Coming up to 6 of those would have been a B Corp. So we became a B Corp in 2019 and have recertified once since then, and are just about to go into our second one. So yeah, it's been a bit of a journey. Yeah.
Love it. And some, brilliant companies, lots of B Corp experience as well. We are running the Slido app. So if you've got questions for this great panel, then send them our way and we'll get through as many as we can. To kick things off, though, I want to know why you went down the B Corp route. So maybe each of you could explain why you pursued this in the first place. Who wants to kick off?
Yeah, I can kick off there. So, I mean, B Corp for us, when we first started, we really did everything in what we believed was the right way, both from a sustainability perspective, but also looking after our team, working with local suppliers. I call them local suppliers. I feel like they're friends. But lots of, we were building a community around the brewery, and we felt that that was the right way to do it. James and I both came from the drinks industry, so I've been brewing now for coming on to 20 years. James was in wine and spirits, and we actually met at Sipsmith Gin Distillery. And we both had seen a huge amount of waste in the industry, and we thought that needed to be rectified. So we built the business in that way already, and therefore becoming part of B Corp for us was a natural progression. But it also meant that actually what B Corp delivers you beyond just certifying what you're doing is it gives you a pathway to enable you to better your business. So it gives you a really nice, the impact assessment itself is almost like it's a kind of a tick box. It's more than just a tick box situation. It's a nice pathway into how to better your business overall. And it has continued to be that way. We were, when we first certified, the very first brewery in London to become a B Corp. There are about 130, 140 breweries in London now, and we're still the only, quite sadly in a way, we're still the only B Corp brewery in London.
Yeah, so actually our journey with B Corp started with small beer. We were inspired by small beer, so they were the first brand that I ever noticed to go down the route of getting B Corp. And looking at our business, we were doing lots of practices that were very good, but also sort of looking at my previous bar background, I tend to think that with sustainability, if you're not keeping it accountable and measurable, then actually you're not doing it properly. So from seeing what they had done, I started doing research about B Corp, lifted up the bonnet, saw it was much more than just sustainability. It's about doing business for better. But the key thing, what I really like about it is it's the accountability that it delivers. And to do the process of getting the certification, that alone is such a Herculean task that it naturally improves your company. And we were doing things that we thought were quite good, but then the journey of B Corp, it just really, it forces you just to be better. And there's no way back from it as well.
What about you, Paul?
So that the background of being a conservation biologist meant that I was always very conscious about what we were making and how we were doing it. Meant that I felt like we were doing quite a lot of good things as a company. It was quite hard to communicate those succinctly to people. People were saying, well, how can you prove that you're sustainable as a company? So we looked at B Corp as being one of the best ways of doing that was instantly recognizable. But then again, as Declan said, going down that process, it was very much, we thought we were doing a lot of good stuff, but there's all this stuff that we're not doing. We can do so much better. So it was a really good process for us to go down. We started initially in 2019, then COVID, etc., meant all that was on pause for quite a long time. And then we had to re-engage with the process, but I learned a lot through that. Now it's something we're very proud of because, as our name suggests, we want our plants to be around forever. So it's a key part of that communication, but it's also part of a checking in on ourselves to make sure we're still doing what we set out to achieve.
Nice. So our story is probably a bit similar to Paul. My career started at KPMG in the sustainability department way back when, before sustainability was even a thing. And I'm not going to tell you quite how long ago that was. So sustainability and reporting was always really important to me. I then moved to the Australian federal government and I work with Aboriginal communities and trying to build governance, so more than just environmental sustainability, building everything in. Then I decided to run my own business, and we weren't really sure what we were going to do, so we took the step back. I'm going through a very long story here, but in a nutshell, we decided to go into cider because it was sustainable. We then worked with our suppliers based on the principles of fair trade and ethics, etc., etc. So we'd done all these things, and my very first business model was actually a social enterprise. And then we tried to raise money, and all investors told us to go and get lost. So we changed the plan. But then we launched the business, and we were doing all these amazing things, but didn't have one symbol that we could put on the product to tell people that we're doing all these wonderful things without having to ramble on and on about all the great things we're doing. We wanted something that we could put on the label that says what we're doing, so we can move the conversation beyond rambling like I'm doing now. And so that's why we became a B Corp. And like you guys, going through that process was brilliant, because even with years and years of knowing what sustainability reporting and measuring and all these things looks like, there were still so many things that came out of the woodwork and in innovation and changes we had to make in our business to be better. So I think we came out of it stronger than we did before we went in as well. It was very good.
Wonderful. And listening to the keynote this morning from Doug from Tony's Chocolonely, who talked about impact, being an impact business, being at the ultimate, and that's very different from having a purpose. I guess B Corp allows you to reset your purpose. But I wonder if you can explain then how B Corp certification has helped you create impact and what some of those impacts might be, especially some of the unsuspecting, the very surprising bits that have been unearthed through this process.
Yeah, I think Declan mentioned sustainability as only being part of B Corp. And I was actually quite surprised by the way that our ethics as a brewery, our reason for being really is to give people an option to drink mid-strength instead of necessarily going for completely non-alcoholic beer or full-strength beer. And I think by going through the impact assessment the first time round, we realized actually how much of a benefit that is to our business. We'd seen the two things as being completely separate. Our reason for being and the kind of ethical side of brewing a mid-strength beer, and the fact that we can sleep at night knowing that there aren't people getting completely smashed on our beer, versus sustainability and building a community. We kind of saw those as completely separate things. And I think B Corp allowed us to figure out that actually that sort of ethical side to the business was just as important as the ethics of drinking alcohol was just as important as the ethics of producing a product with the planet in mind.
And what about you, Laura? I know a big part of your story is food waste and making use of that food waste.
I'm sitting here trying to rack my brain for the stats, but I think what you're talking about being good as well as the impact you've had. One of the things it's forced us to do is measure our impact quite effectively. So I think the stat is 900 tons of apple waste we removed from the apple waste supply chain at source, because we're using the Golden Delicious Granny Smith apples from the supermarket, but rather than them going to waste at the point of the supermarket, we're taking them out and turning them into cider. And because of B Corp, that's helped us sort of measure that progress year on year as to how many apples we're actually taking out of that waste supply chain. And apples are quite a big chunk of food waste that goes into the waste stream every year. So that was one. Measuring the impact of people has been another big thing for us. Again, the minute you start measuring something, it matters. So, measuring female leadership and developing women within our business, putting them into leadership positions. We've definitely managed to achieve that. I think 20% growth last year, although that's quite rich coming from a very small business. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely helped us measure what matters within our business. So across the board through human resources, supply chain, measuring our suppliers, force us to put really good processes in place for our annual reviews of our suppliers to make sure they're doing what they say on the tin, to make sure we are being honest and ethical to our consumers. There've been so many good things to come out of it.
And the B Corp movement is not without contention, and there's been some high-profile dissenters. There's been companies that have turned their back on it. Every company I've ever interviewed about B Corp has said that it's actually really tough. It's quite an onerous process. What's your experience? Have you ever been tempted to kind of go, do you know what, this is just too much for us, we'll sell our own path? What's your experience of actually, being recertified?
I would say that the journey of, being a founder of a drinks business is always going to be tough. And effectively, if we weren't just up for getting out there and blazing through the hailstorm, then, what's the point? Like, we could just can the whole thing. So it's important to just get out and keep doing it. And sometimes, yes, it feels like B Corp is trying to, knock you down into the ground, and you've just got to say, no, actually, we're doing this for the right reasons. And I think as long as you feel that you are there for the right reason and you're doing the things, it's not just becoming a tick box exercise and, okay, have I written one more policy that I might not put into action? You've got to feel like you are in it for the reason that B Corp was put together, which was to make business better, to do business for good. And so I think I have certainly seen some of that sort of dissent, as you've said. I can't help but feel that perhaps these are people who are kind of looking for a reason to get out, and this is maybe a good excuse. It's tough, yeah, but it's tough for a good reason. And B Corp, it's becoming much, much tougher. And, as Paul was just saying before we started, they've just brought out a new standard that we will all be rigorously tested against in the coming years, and that's only right.
Share any experiences,
I
Lauren?
I've got to add to what you said and the naysayers. I think so. I'm the only one in our team and company with a background and interest in sustainability. The rest, my business partner is a chartered accountant. Our lead investor who's on the board is also a chartered accountant, finance guy. The other guy is very commercial, and it's all about the numbers and the unit economics and all that other stuff. And because when you become a B Corp, you have to change your articles of association within the company. And business people understand that because there's an actual pressure on them to uphold those standards. They've got a fiduciary duty to do so. So the minute they start poo-pooing activities I want to do or actions we want to implement, kind of take them back there and they go over pale and then listen to what I've had to say. So, I think you can poo-poo all you want, but the minute there's an actual change in your articles of association, it matters. So it is tick box, and it is quite a long process to go through, but the end result is a physical change to the way your company is structured. So I think that's important.
Yeah, you talk about it being very challenging, but it's a little bit like a challenging teacher who helps you improve. You don't feel like B Corp are out to get you or trick you or give you more hurdles every time. It feels like they're kind of gently encouraging you to perform to the best of your ability. So it was a very challenging process to go through, and it's going to be very challenging to recertify, but I feel like it's making us better. So yeah, at least gives you the incentive to
Good luck.
to keep pushing.
Yeah, and what I would also add is, small businesses, from our experience, we're very chaotic, and we're not perfect. And I liken running our business is like trying to fix a plane while we fly it. And you literally have to find the money because you never have enough. The thing about B Corp is simple things that help us for the future. We wouldn't have a company handbook if it wasn't for doing that process. We did the company handbook because we started B Corp. You need it. But then now we do see colleagues who utilize it, and you're like, oh, right, well, that is. And I think that's what it really does help, because you're spinning so many plates, you're doing so many jobs. It's a good way of just making sure your foundation blocks are right, because we all plan to grow. And I think it sets you up for that success, because ultimately it's very chaotic in the early stages.
Thanks for sharing that. I guess the other interesting point is about how you're communicating with consumers. You're in incredibly crowded markets. You've got to stand out. Do your customers care about the fact that you're B Corp certified? Does it matter that they don't care? What's your experience and how you engage with consumers on this?
I always think, like, when we got B Corp, you naturally think, oh, we might sell loads more, and that didn't happen. But what I do think that what I've noticed is that we have a tribe, we have people who really like us, and it really acted as a great enforcer for that. The people who were on board saw that we had done that, they were happy about that, and it felt like it really solidified that relationship, because we can never take our followers for granted, and it felt like it really fueled that relationship.
I agree. It's definitely not a if you're in it just as a sort of marketing tactic, it's really not going to work. Having said that, I think we've only ever had one piece of negative feedback where we had a long-standing customer who wrote to us and said, you're a bunch of lefties, I'm not interested. And I honestly think, well, if that's your mindset, then, you don't have to buy the beer. But I'd say there are probably lots of people who do buy it because they know that we're doing business for good. It's not going to suddenly make the numbers work miraculously.
So I completely agree. For us, I don't think it's had. For me, it's a removal of a barrier within a conversation. So, looking at a sort of a business-to-business conversation, and as I said, the reason why we became a B Corp applies now. It allows me to park that conversation for them to trust and have faith that what I'm saying, that we are ethical and sustainable, is true, and to move on to what I actually want to talk about, which is the quality of the liquid, why it's going to work in their establishment, how we can partner together. It allows me to sell our product in with the words and phrases I want to use, as opposed to spending ages and ages discussing, trying to convince them that even though our cider isn't made in England, it actually is more sustainable and it is ethical and we do all the right things. Whereas before we had B Corp, I'd spend a lot of the conversation you're basically starting on the back foot, trying to explain why you deserve to be in the room. Whereas now it's just sort of eliminated that barrier. So I don't know if that, answers the question.
It was lovely to hear, Declan, you say that you were inspired and influenced by what Small Beer were doing and that sort of knock-on effect. I love it when that happens. How do you see the B Corp movement influencing the wider drinks industry, the big boys? Get them involved in some of this stuff.
I mean, I like to think that we are all, slowly getting slightly more annoying to the big guys. And eventually they will realize that there are better ways of making things and running their businesses. I say that sort of, that sounds like a very David and Goliath type situation. And I have a good friend who works in sustainability in a big corporation. And I think, generally speaking, this is the way that all business has to run anyway now these days, is they have to better themselves continually. And, greenwashing has been pointed out so many times that people are a little bit more aware of what they can and can't say. And therefore, I think, generally speaking, businesses are trying to do the right thing. There's obviously a big caveat, but, there are many businesses, perhaps I should say, that are doing the right thing.
Many of the B Corps that I've spoken to over the years have said that the best thing about being a B Corp is the ability to attract the right people in your business. Do you find that you end up attracting the same sort of people that share the same philosophy?
It's definitely an attraction for people joining the business. We've had quite a few people that have come for job interviews on the basis of the fact that we're a B Corp and they like what that stands for, but it also means that they have a bit of trust that we will do right by them as the company grows, and we'll look after them. We have the right approach, and again, that process of going through certification means you tighten up all those policies that maybe you didn't think you needed initially, but would have come back to bite you down the line. So it means that the playbook is in place, so that whether someone needs to go on parental leave, or whether you have disability policies in place or something like that, it gives people the confidence to know that you're an ethical company and they'll be looked after. Definitely attracts people.
Yes. Yes, it has. It's definitely attracted people through the interview process. I guess, I mean, I want to speak very positively about B Corp all the time, but I think it also sometimes attracts a type of person who thinks they don't need to work particularly hard. I've had to weed those out because they think that being a B Corp means that we're all fluffy and warm and white and we don't actually do much work and we can just sit around. So I have had that experience, so that's why I could have had to pause on my answer. But yes, we've definitely attracted a level of candidates who care about the things we care about. And for example, I've never had to tell our team to use public transport. They just do. For example, I know if someone says they want a company car that they're not right for our business. So I guess it sets those sorts of things apart. But yeah, it's had positive and negative impacts.
That did make me laugh. I think one of the first lines whenever we interview anybody is like, you do realize you're joining a startup, right? You know what that means. So your job description is not just your job description, it's do everything.
Excellent. Well, look, one final word from each of you. There'll be people in the audience here, there'll be people tuning in online, wondering whether to go down this route. What would be your advice or words of wisdom for them? We'll start with you.
I would say, and I always like to remind people of this, is that B Corp, so the impact assessment is actually free of charge to use. And you can go on to the B Corp website and you can conduct an impact assessment of any business. It doesn't have to be a drinks business. And you can run through that and effectively, I mean, as Declan was saying, make your business better. It's like an out of the box startup kit to figure out sort of how to make your business more robust. You only have to start paying B Corp to go through the actual certification process, but you can just go on and start an impact assessment today, and B Corp will tell you what your score is. Now, if you don't achieve a score above 80, you're not going to pass and get your certification, but that's great because then you can figure out what you would need to do in order to get there.
Yeah, for great advice. Declan?
Things like this might not be front and center in society right now, and we might have political leaders around the world where it's not their priority, but they will die, and there's a young generation that's coming through who it does mean a lot to. And I think if you're not doing this sort of thing, sooner or later it'll catch you out. So I just think with B Corp, why would you not do it? And it just makes perfect sense because the world will change really quickly one day where this will become a real requirement, and eventually governments will realize that there are real tangible incentivizations that they can deliver on here through tax breaks, etc. It'll happen, and those companies that have it will be well set to progress forward. Those that don't, well, they'll die also.
I think one of the other things we've seen recently is a little bit of criticism of B Corp that doesn't go far enough. We've had some people move away from B Corp because they feel it's not enough for them. So, well, you can always do more. You can always get it and go beyond. Like we're particularly focused on plant conservation. There's not a whole section of the B Corp impact assessment which talks about how are you conserving plants, but it doesn't mean we can't do it. So, yeah, I think some of that, the vocal critics at the moment, maybe, I don't know, maybe they're in it for a different agenda, but you don't need to stop at just B Corp.
Laura, the final word.
Final word. I think following on from what Paul was saying and really leaning into that, if you don't have to become a B Corp, there's no prerequisite to become one. So if you are doing it, do it for the right reasons. So the challenges and things that have been happening lately, I think it's companies who signed up as a sort of marketing exercise, which makes the rest of us who are actually trying to do the right thing look bad. So definitely, if you're going to do it because you actually genuinely give a shit. There.
Thank you. Some wonderful advice, great insights. Please join me in showing your appreciation for our panel. Thank you.